One. Welcome to another Tired Dad podcast. I've forgotten what episode this is, but if you know this guy, we had him towards the beginning of the Tired Dad podcast, and I've asked him to come on again to talk about co-parenting. Now, if you don't know JP, he's the co-parenting coach. You help people, don't you, go through this and navigate through the process of co-parenting. Do you just do men or do you do both sides?
Both sides, when you're talking about the mental aspect, the
Mhm.
mindsets, and these sorts of things, there's the lateral hurdles, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? The
yeah,
same pitfalls kind of go for both sides.
yeah,
In person, it's mostly been men,
yeah,
but both more or less. Women typically are more in the space of self-help and trying to improve. You know what I mean? It's no secret that it's a female dominated space
yeah,
because men are taught that they're not allowed to accept help, ask for help,
yeah.
need help. You got to be strong, you got to do these things. And so, it's getting better to kind of break through those societal pressures
Yeah.
towards men to where they're open to the ideas of other points of view and
Yeah.
some help
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why you're so good at it is because you've been through the process yourself, haven't you? So you've been,
Mhm.
and you continue to be the co-parent. I remember talking from before, you're very much involved in your children's
Right,
life.
right.
And I feel like you've got to some middle ground with co-parenting and moving forward. So I think it's a great way for you to share your knowledge, obviously in your coaching aspect, face to face, online. And I thought it'd be a
Right.
great way to get you on the podcast. Let's talk about co-parenting regarding dads losing their role as dad. Okay. And the reason why I say that, I get so many dads talking to me about once they've left the home, they're worried
Right.
about not being the dad. Okay. They're worried about someone coming in the back gate, the new boyfriend, the new stepdad, and all them sort of things. And let's be real, that's probably one of the most fears that we all, as dads, have felt or would feel if we left the home. How do dads navigate that?
I mean, from my experience, because I'm in that situation
Yeah.
or have gone through that situation. My daughter's in a blended family, right?
Hmm.
And so like they're not married, but she's got the stepdad and stepbrother and it's a family and all these,
Yeah.
all that stuff. Now, not letting your sometimes you got to get out of your own head
Yeah.
and realize that they're not competition. They're not taking your place. If you're doing your job, you're nobody can replace you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, there's another guy coming in and he's sure he's going to take on a certain amount of responsibility, but the authority is typically not there. They're not going to be a dad. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Some situations you get these real toxic kind of situations, and maybe the mom is pushing that and this and that. But on the large scale of things, you know, they're not trying to step in and take over your
Yeah.
role, take over your deal. I mean, there's going to be certain stuff that goes on in that household
Yeah.
that they may have to deal with, and it's going to be their kind of issue or their problems or their responsibilities or that kind of stuff. But that's their house and that's their privilege, that's their right, and you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
need to be injecting yourself into their household if you don't want them injecting into yours.
Very true. Very true. Yeah.
And so I mean it's a legitimate fear. I mean, for sure.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to lose their children and nobody wants somebody else to come in, but when you can change your thoughts and mindset and outlook as this person is a collaborator with me
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're all in this together. It takes a village to raise a children, you know what I mean? And all these different things as opposed to the and now I'm in competition.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
I have to compete with this guy for the love of my children when that's
Yeah.
not even
Yeah.
going through your children's minds. You know
No,
what I
no.
mean? You're
And I think,
dad.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I remember talking to you from before, and one of the things I took away from your podcast was get out of your own head.
Uh-huh.
Because I think what tends to happen is once the dad's left the family, and the structure of the family, they've got a lot of time to think about things, haven't they? So they're
Right,
getting in their own head a lot of the time.
right,
And let's be real, seeing the other stepdad as a competition, that's the game to lose, isn't it? You're going to lose
right.
that. And so, how do dads what would be the best way of dads navigating that? Would it be good to try and partner up and become not friends, but on talking terms with the stepdad or the new boyfriend? How would it? Because a lot of the times ego kicks in, stubbornness kicks
Right.
in as men, and we become this masculine man that wants to
Right.
go, I'm better than you and all that sort of thing. How would be the best way to go about it?
Well, I mean, the first thing, the first step is always going to be to grieve and deal with the emotional baggage and feelings that you have from the relationship.
Yeah, yeah,
Because until you can move forward from that,
yeah,
you're going to be in that jealousy
yeah,
mindset, headspace. You know what I mean?
yeah, of
It's
course,
hard to
yeah,
start
yeah,
moving forward if you're stuck in
yeah,
the
yeah.
past.
And you want to let go of control, don't you? But even though you
Right,
want control, you
right.
want to let go of it. Yeah,
You have to. And I
yeah,
mean, there's a certain, and, you know, open communication is important. Now, you can be friends, be friendly. If you become too close or too much friends, then you're gonna have to start navigating the too much information realm. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. Of
the issues that maybe you don't need to be a part of
course.
or hear about and that kind of
Well,
stuff
yeah,
with their relationship and all that stuff.
yeah,
So I mean, it's gonna be a navigation
yeah,
of how deep you want to get or how familiar or how, but open communication is probably one of the biggest things that anybody can do.
yeah,
If something is bugging you, or you feel like they're overstepping, or you feel like, it's okay to express your wants, needs, fears, boundaries, expectations,
hmm,
and communicate those and have those boundaries. But if you don't communicate them, nobody knows. You know what I
yeah,
mean? You can't
yeah,
be
yeah,
mad at him for crossing a boundary
yeah.
that
And
he
it's just
doesn't know is there.
yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, and I think we're really good at it's that what's that? It's that I can't remember what it's called now, where you're angry with someone, but you're not telling them why. So
Hmm.
and they're meant to guess, but they're going to
Right.
guess
Right.
right. So they're just going
Yeah.
to carry
Read my
on.
mind. Read my
Yeah,
mind.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And let's be real, men aren't good at reading anything generally, are we?
No.
You know what I
No.
mean? So we ain't going to read each other's minds and all that sort of thing. So it's literally being honest and having a frank discussion. And that's going to be a hard conversation to have, isn't it?
Right. Right. And I
But
mean, one of the things that, and this is going to be it'll be a surprising thing, but it'll make a lot of sense. And
yeah,
this is what I find is that one of the biggest conflict generators, right? So you're married or you have a long relationship, you get divorced or split up, you know what I mean? However long the relationship was going south is sort of what you normalize as that person's personality, your ex-wife, your ex-girlfriend, your the mother to your children, right?
yeah.
So then this guy comes in who more times than not had nothing to do with the collapse of your relationship, right?
True. Yep, yep.
But now you're seeing your the other parent happy
Hmm.
and in love
Yep.
and in this state that you remember from early in your relationship.
Powerful,
And
man.
so now you forget about all of the down
Yeah,
and
yeah,
all of the collapse of your relationship.
yeah.
And then it's going to ignite jealousy of that guy because he's doing something that you've lost,
Yeah. That you
that you
had,
weren't able to
not
do
anymore.
anymore. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's sort of a reflection of failure and
yeah.
to yourself.
It's
It's a weird spider web of
yeah, yeah,
mental
yeah.
anguish
But
that you're putting on yourself.
I totally get that. I can see it. And that fear of failure because you had it and then it's gone and now she's got it again, that
Right.
triggers a lot of men, wouldn't it?
Hmm.
And I bet it's not a nice feeling to be in.
Right. And it's an emotional deal that most men are not equipped to process and deal with.
Of
You know
course.
what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And if you haven't dealt with the lingering emotions, the baggage from the relationship, then
Yeah,
it's really hard to process all of this new stuff on top,
yeah,
especially if, more times than not in a relationship, one person is kind of checked out of that relationship far sooner than the other one.
yeah, yeah,
And then the relationship ends, and that person usually starts dating a lot sooner, which
yeah.
also dumps on to, so if
How has that
she
guy
knew
been
that,
around sooner? Has he been there
right,
remorse? You know what I mean? But
right,
only because they've checked out a long time ago
right.
that they're ready to move on. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Just one of the things you just said about the whole, it's powerful, isn't it? That so many times as dads. co-parenting, um, we forget so quickly why we were leaving in the first place,
Right.
or why it was going through the tough times, or why it was down, why it was not the best arena. And when you're by yourself, you start seeing the good bits because she starts changing to be the person
Right.
she was a long, long time ago.
Right.
And that I've never looked at it like that before, and that's powerful, man. I think that a lot of dads need to understand that, don't they?
Right.
The concept
And
of
good. And you're thrown into a new reality
yeah,
where you get propelled into this new reality where you have a lot more time on your hands to really dwell on these things as
yeah, yeah.
well. You know what I
And
mean? Like,
which we're good at as men, aren't we? We're good at dwelling
right,
on
right.
things. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, most guys, if they go and start hiding in the bottle or into gaming or into anything else, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
they go to work and maybe they interact a lot and then they're probably going home or sitting at a bar by themselves or sitting
yeah,
at a gaming place or whatever the case may be.
yeah. I know.
And
Yeah,
then they're just beating themselves the entire time
yeah, yeah.
because they're constantly chasing distraction after distraction, which isn't any healthier. You know what I mean? It's
I call it the sabotage circle, where like you're literally going around in a circle, aren't you? And like you said,
Mhm.
unless you're doing something like chasing dopamine hits all the time, down the bottle, watching porn, going to get
Right.
stripped, whatever you're doing, and that's another arena to go down that you don't want to go down. How do dads then navigate the conflict they have like with their ex-partner? How when it comes to, let's say for instance, discipline the kids. Okay, one of the
Mhm.
big questions I always get is like my ex-wife doesn't discipline the kids like I do. They get away with too much than I do. I don't know the answer to what you're going to say, but I think from a professional point of view, yourself, it's a good way to hear it. How can dads navigate disciplining their children differently compared to their ex-partners, setting boundaries with their kids probably differently to their ex-partners? How can dads navigate that?
It's it's tricky,
Yeah.
but I mean it's tricky. I lucked out, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we've had discussions but me and my daughter's mother have always been on the same page, but background wise, discipline wise, what's
Which
expected,
helps. It
what
helps.
what happens at each house, but we've had lengthy conversations and open communication about what is acceptable
Hmm.
and what's unacceptable. And
Hmm.
we've negotiated, more or less and compromised and this and that to where it's even
Yeah.
at both houses. And
Yeah.
so then there's no, well, mom lets me do it, dad lets me do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rules are rules at both houses. The chores are basically the same. Food's basically the same kind of meals. Responsibilities, bedtimes, TV time, tablet time, all these things are, if not the same at both houses, close enough to the same at both houses to where it's like, I don't want to go to dad's. He doesn't let me sit on my tablet for 12 hours a day like mom does because she's
Yeah.
gone,
Yeah.
or
And
vice
that's the common
versa.
occurrence, isn't it? That's so
Right.
common. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, everything's going to start with the communication and what the expectations are, right? And so you can't, if you can't talk to the other parent about what your, hopes, dreams, expectations, boundaries, and these things are,
Yeah.
how are they supposed to even know what your rules are at your house?
Yeah. If you don't know that what they are, and she doesn't know what they are, how are
Right.
your kids meant to know? Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you can't get on the same page, and I mean, even if you got to go and talk to somebody and do like a small mediation deal with somebody that has no chips in the game and say, hey, these are my expectations when they're at my house, hers are completely different. How can we get these closer together and both feel like we're raising a fully capable, a human being that we can be proud
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
without being pitted against each other?
Course, yeah, and trying to get the one up on each other
Right,
by being the child's favorite, because that's what tends to happen. Is the mom wants to be, or the dad wants to be the child's favorite. It's
right,
usually the dad because the dad's not always there, so they're doing the buying the presents, they're doing the I'm better than your mom because I let you do this and all that sort of
right,
thing. And
right.
that's just a spiral down no man's land, isn't it? Of
And it is, and it can go both ways too. You know what I
course,
mean?
yeah,
Like the dads that don't get as much time with the kids,
yeah,
when they get the kids, let them run wild and do whatever they want because they feel guilty because they don't get as much time as they want, or they don't
yeah,
want them to be mad at them. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
you got to figure out ways to navigate this, but also be adults about it because your actions are going to generate your kids' future actions.
Hmm.
And so if they don't have any rules, no responsibility, no, uh, you know, any of these things, then you're teaching them bad habits. If every time they go to dad's house, all they do is eat pizza, pizza rolls, get
Yep.
taken out to dinner and all these different things, it could be up till midnight at 6 years old and all these things,
Yep.
then you're not helping them establish good habits. You're not helping them,
Yep.
generate these good.
Totally. Totally. Let me ask you a question just off. It's just come to my head and I don't want to forget about it. Wh- How much percentage of a good breakup and good co-parenting is down to the reason why they broke up?
I mean,
And if I explain a bit more, like if there's been an affair or something that's gone on regarding
mhm.
unfaithfulness, whatever parties, is that going to cause a lot more bitterness and resentment in how it all pans out, rather than two people saying, "We've just fallen out of love, let's just try our best." Does it make a massive difference?
If you're unwilling to heal from it, it does.
Yeah,
Because if you're going to hold the resentment,
yeah,
anger, shame, betrayal towards the other parent as a reflection of their parenting,
yeah.
rather than, you're letting
Personal.
something privately between two adults
Yeah,
get interjected into children, right? And so, but letting go, forgiving, moving forward, because if you hold on to all of that, you're not going to be able to move forward.
mm, mm.
And if
It's a
you're,
hard ask, isn't it? It's a hard
it
ask.
is, but I mean, nothing's too hard for your kids
No,
in my
true.
in
Very
my
true.
mind. You know what I
Very
mean?
true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally. I know. I think you're 100% right. And if you said that to dads, like,
Hmm.
this isn't, if this is not for your wife, this is not for you, this is for your kids, I think that would instantly click a light bulb, wouldn't it, in their heads? You know what I
Right,
mean? Because of that responsibility, because of that connection. Not like if a mediator said to someone, like, you don't need to be angry because you're doing this for your kids.
right.
I think a lot of
And
dads,
it's, and I run into that situation. I've worked with guys who've been in situations similar, or the cheating, or
yeah,
the she was emotionally checked out and then left me, or even if the split was amicable and they were pretty civil and okay until they got wrapped into the judicial court system, and then it became
yeah,
a
that's
drag out
fine.
fight that they never recovered from.
Yeah, yeah,
Or the resentment from the dad's side of what child support payment is, or how much time he gets, or if he feels like he got taken advantage of in court, or railroaded. And it's like holding on to this anger,
yeah,
what is it going to do for you?
exactly. And that's the biggest question.
You can't change it. I mean, if there's something that you can't change, why are you so focused on it?
Yeah.
That's like being mad at your third grade teacher for failing you on a test when you're 30 years old. You know what I mean? You can't change it. There's nothing that's going to change it. All you can do is be the best dad you can be.
Yeah, 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 totally,
And the
man.
more you show up, and the more that you're there, and the more that you're present, and the more you show up, and the more that you show, and the more that you are who you want to be,
Yeah.
the more everybody's going to let go of their thoughts, feelings, viewpoints towards you, because you're showing them with your actions that this is who I am and this is who I want to be. And you'll get more time, and you'll
And
get more
I
of
think you'll
this.
get that.
And
You'll get more respect, won't you?
right,
You get a lot more
right,
respect, a lot more time. You've touched on the financial side, which is the next part I want to go to, because I think financial what's the financial side of it gets so many dads annoyed, frustrated,
right.
unfair sometimes. And I know the system in America is totally different to how we do things in the UK. And I'm not quite sure about Europe and other countries like that. However, how do dads navigate the financial side? Because ideally, you don't want to go through court.
Right,
Ideally.
right.
However, let's be real. And I don't know what it's like in America, but especially in the UK, like it's straight to court. I want half. If you married you, I want half, or
Right.
I want my maintenance. And then the dad, either if he's working for himself, he'll try and scam the system and say, "I'm not paying anything. I don't owe anything or earn anything," and
Right.
all these sort of things, stuff like that. How are you? How's it meant to be navigated as a co-parent, dad?
I mean, without seeming too harsh, I mean, whether I agree with it or
Yeah.
whether it's right or whether it's fair really has no bearing on any of it
Hmm.
because it's real and it's reality and it is what it is. And you can't dwell on things that you can't actively change. And
Yep.
if you're not actively trying to change it, then I don't fucking want to hear about it, to be
Yeah.
honest with you,
Yeah.
because you're complaining and you're using all this energy and focus and mental, all your mental stuff,
Yeah.
worrying about something that you have no control over that you can't change that is not, and then when you ask the question, well, what are you doing to rectify it, to change it? What's, you know what I mean? Are you writing letters to your local newspaper? Are you, starting this deal? Are you putting pressure on the judges in your area to be more fair towards dads? Are you writing letters weekly to your congressmen, this and that, da, 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 da. And
Mhm.
they're like, well, no. Well, then you're just complaining.
Yeah.
And,
Which dads
that's
love to
it.
do. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not actively doing anything. And what you could be doing actively is letting it go and being the happiest,
Yeah.
most involved, best dad that you can be. But instead, you're just sitting here rooting around in this. And then when your kids are around, you're exhausted or you're lowering, the person that you want to be by saying shit about the mom, the court system, how it's unfair. You know what I mean? And that's a lot to dump on your kids.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And they'll sense that and they'll feel that
Right.
and
Right.
then that causes a lot of emotions. And what you don't want then is emotions paired up with when they come to dad. You don't want that negative emotion. Every time I
Right.
go to dad, I feel like this because he talks about this and that and the other.
Right.
Um, and how when it comes to payment and finances and all that sort of thing, is it best to go down the mediation route? Is it best to try and sort out between yourselves when co-parenting? What do you think?
I mean, it's going to be a deal that I personally think that if I'm not wrapped in the court system.
Yeah,
We were unmarried, so we didn't have to go through court systems,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So our custody, our time, our money, our all of these things we have figured out on our own.
Yeah.
And we don't have to deal with the added stress of, oh, it's my week at this time in the summer. No, she can't go with your parents on a road trip to Oregon because I'll miss my time and da, da, da. You know what I mean? So all
Yeah,
these
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah,
little
yeah.
bigger fights don't really pop up with us, which in America and probably most everywhere else, if you're married, you don't get that option. You're automatically pushed
Hmm.
into the custody court,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
the child support and all that stuff. You
yeah,
don't get that option.
yeah,
But I mean, it's tricky because you're basically, in a very real way, you're paying your other parent to babysit your kids so that you can work more to be able to afford to pay them and live on your own. So it's a weird vicious circle that's just a money generating,
yeah,
machine
yeah.
to the court systems, the counties, the, child support systems. But in a perfect world, everything would just be 50-50.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and work out the be able to communicate and work out the small little these and those and the others,
Yeah, of course.
like
Yeah, yeah,
I don't uh my daughter's mother works from home, and so I don't have to deal with the doctor's appointments, the haircuts,
hmm,
the day trips, the swim lessons in the summertime. You know what I mean? She can clock
yeah. The
out,
little
take her
bits.
to all these things, take her back. And
Yeah,
I'm
of
anywhere within 100 miles because I still do construction. So, like, for me to do those things, I'd have to take an entire day off work
course. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. And that has a knock-on
And
effect.
right. But we have it worked out to where this works for us. And
Hmm.
so, I pay for all the stuff and half the stuff and all these, school clothes. She tells me how much the school clothes were, and then I just send her, half or round
Yeah,
up or
yeah,
whatever, whatever.
yeah,
And, everybody's like, well, when you do your taxes, do you guys do every other year? Do you claim your
yeah.
daughter
Of
this or
course.
that?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like, I've never have. I never claimed it.
yeah,
But I don't have to do all this other, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
that's
Of
my
course.
even trade. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? You
yeah,
can
yeah,
take the
yeah,
credit, take the tax write-off or whatever
yeah,
for the
yeah.
child because you're the one that's doing the doctor's appointments and the dentist appointments, and and you're a little bit better
and
at
it's
adulting,
less
and so
messy.
I don't have to make those
Yeah,
appointments and
yeah,
schedule
yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff. You know what I
Yeah, of
mean?
course, yeah. And it's less messy then, isn't it?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And I think so, and especially in the UK, like you've got the dad that you got the dad that leaves. Oh, sorry, my light's gone off. 2 seconds. You've got the dad that leaves, and then
Hmm.
before, and then what happens is then the wife wants money, so then they go through CSA, and then that becomes messy. They skip out the main part of talking.
Right.
I mean, they
Right.
go from 0 to 100, and they actually miss the part of how about just sitting down. And sometimes you don't need to go because we have a thing called Kafka. So it goes Kafka first,
Hmm.
and then they make they're a bit of media, like a mediators.
Right.
They send a report to the court. And you don't need to go from Kafka to the court. You could say, okay, we've done Kafka, so we'll leave it there, and you
Right.
try to settle it that way. But I do think like sometimes just going to a mediator, just to someone again who's in the middle, not associated with anything, is going to be a lot more beneficial rather than number one going to solicitors who's going to try and get as much money out of you as possible and
Right.
make it longer. Also, they're going to ask you to be very defensive with each other
Right.
because that's what they want.
Right.
Misery. They
Right.
love misery. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
They make money off misery. So the more
Yeah.
misery everyone is, the more it's going to be harder. Then the more they get paid and all these sort of things. And I think what tends to happen is you make a decision, you co-parent, and everyone always goes to the money first, don't they? It's always the money.
Right.
They always go to the money first, and then they forget about actually we can actually sit down and talk. They just go from A to Z, and it becomes a messy thing, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's, and to push this long-term, scheduled decision and all these things onto two people who are actively in conflict
Yeah,
is the
yeah,
worst idea possible,
yeah.
because you got two people that are already fighting, already in
Yeah,
their feelings of anger and hurt feelings and shame or whatever, you know what I mean? And so
totally.
obviously they're going to go at each other's throats,
Mhm.
and the best interest of the children doesn't come into anybody's mind,
Yep. And that's why the
between the
mediation,
mediator, the
yeah,
parents, any of
yeah,
them. Nobody, like the kid is being left out of
yeah,
the all decisions.
yeah. It's and now being out of it and looking in, you see that probably even more clearly
Right.
now. And it's scary, really, that the kid doesn't get thought of. Even though parents say that they want the best for the kids, it doesn't get thought of, does it?
Right.
Let's talk about dating. Okay, let's talk about dating.
Hmm.
We all know when that new person comes on the scene, emotions get high. Whether
Right.
they left for someone for an affair or whether they've met someone during the process. And I will be honest, men don't like to be alone that much, so they want some attention and all that sort of
Right.
thing. We tend to find someone a lot quicker than we say we go into, oh no, I'm gonna spend a year by myself, and it never really happens and all that.
Right.
How do we navigate as a tired dad introducing a new partner? How do we navigate the handling of jealousy from the ex-wife or ex-girlfriend, all the tension? How do we navigate the kids in it all and all that? What's your experience?
I mean,
It's a big topic, I know.
it is. I mean, but some easy tricks. I mean, there are things that are going to set you up for success, and there's things that are going to set you up for failure. If
Yeah,
you look like you're being, you're hiding something, being shady,
yeah,
you know, doing these things like that, then you're
yeah.
going to get that response. And
Mhm.
if you have the ability to communicate openly and do these things, then it's much easier. We had a deal set up, and we'd agreed on it, and I didn't really think about how great it was going to be when we made the deal, but
Yeah,
later, looking back,
yeah.
like we made an agreement that if we started dating somebody and it's got serious enough to where they were going to be around our daughter, we got to meet that person first to get a
Wow.
feel for them.
Wow, that's a good deal, that is, isn't it?
Yeah. You talk about, I've never been blindsided with, my daughter comes over and says, "Oh, mom's new boyfriend moved in," when you don't know she's even dating somebody. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I'm not blind. She didn't get blindsided, and I mean, it's not like I got a carousel of women that have ran through my house in the last 8 years or anything like
David,
that.
come on,
But
man.
at the same time, just having those that respect,
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, like I'm not gonna introduce every woman that I date to my daughter, because I don't want my daughter to look at that as that's the way adult
the
relationships
norm.
are. One
Yeah,
in, one
yeah,
out every other month or anything like that. I
Yeah.
live in a rural area. That's not the case. But,
Yeah.
in a big city, if somebody
Of
that's,
course.
dates a lot, like you don't need to introduce your kids to every person that you are
Exactly.
dating.
Yeah.
If it becomes a serious relationship where it's going to progress, then have the conversation with the other parent and say, "Hey, this is the situation. We've been dating for 6 months.
Hmm.
We're not talking about moving in together. Maybe we are. Da, 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 da. I'd like you to meet them. I want us to be all on the same page and be able to get along."
Yeah.
And that's going to put you leaps and bounds ahead of kids going back to mom's house and saying
Mom
dad's new
saying,
girlfriend just moved in.
yeah,
Dad's
yeah, yeah,
girlfriend stayed the night. And they're
yeah.
like, well, what the, you know what I mean? Like nobody wants to be blindsided. And as a guy, you don't want that done to you. So don't do it to them. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. And I think immaturity, I'm going to be really honest, and the only time I will go against dads is this conversation that I think as dads, it's immaturity that kicks in. And
Right.
what we do is we go, we've got this new girl, she's better looking than the ex-wife, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. And then we want to show her off and all that sort of thing. And that's the immaturity of us as males, isn't it?
Right.
When the reality of what is, fast forward it's going to cause you a lot of shit, a lot of grief, a lot of
Right.
hassle because you've done the worst thing you can ever do, which is
Right.
blindfold your ex-partner.
Well,
And
yeah, your first impression's the lasting one.
yeah,
So if she hates her right off the bat, I
yeah,
mean, if things get serious, say you get married, it's still 10 years down the road, she's still gonna probably hate her.
yeah, of course, because the setup,
Or even if they get friendly, every little thing is going to spark that initial
yeah,
emotion
yeah,
of
yeah,
her
yeah,
first,
yeah.
the first emotions that she had towards her.
Totally. And I think one of the key factors that you've just said is we wouldn't want it done to ourselves
Right.
because we don't want that emotion to be
Yeah.
figured all the time, do we? So why
Well,
would we?
right.
But again, immaturity as
Right.
a male kicks in.
And the double standard, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
cutting out the double standards is a big deal with co-parenting.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's one of those deals that I'm constantly beating into dads' heads. And mom's on another realm, but dads are usually the ones, you know, if you're allowed to have a life outside of your kids, so is she. Don't be driving by her house to see who's parked in the driveway when you have the kids. Don't be going to the bar that somebody had said that she's at. If you don't want her stalking you on Facebook, don't be stalking her on Facebook. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, yeah,
if you
yeah.
don't
And
want
all
these
these are
things done to
real life
you,
things. These are real
right,
life things that dads do. You know what I mean?
right,
And even though dads won't own up to it, let's be real, they'll do the find my phone thing, and because you had a cat
right,
account, and then you're doing that. They'll do the drive by the house to see if anyone's there and late at night and all that sort of thing. And
right,
like you say, if you don't want it done to yourself, don't do it to them.
right.
Um, that I feel like that topic we might have another podcast on because that
Yeah, it
that
gets extreme. I mean, but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
and you do, and you're right, and it's more. I mean, it's not. I mean, there's immaturity on both sides. It depends on who's still dealing with the relationship and not past it and all these different things. Because, the women do the same sorts of things, maybe not the exact same scenarios, but if you found it, a lot of times the guys will find out that she's dating somebody else, right? Or dating somebody new, and they're somewhere in town because the grandparents are babysitting the kids or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And so then they make it a point to go to that place. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Just to be in the realm, make it uncomfortable, do these things. And
Yeah,
like these kinds of things happen constantly. And it's like, well, why?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
why? What? I mean,
What benefit is
what
it?
is that? What are you trying to accomplish other than making them mad,
Mhm.
triggering them to where they're going to do back to you in a different way? You know what I mean?
It's like a flex, isn't it? It's like an ego flex,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
They're trying to flex their wings or whatever it is they're trying to do.
right, right.
But there's just no benefit from it.
No, because then
Um,
you're just going to end up getting served with some other court papers or something as
yeah.
soon as she can.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you
An
wonder why
injunction, an
everything's a drag
injunction,
out
and that's it.
fight.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what you don't want then, do you know what I mean? So
Right.
it's okay for. Okay, let's lastly I want because we could spend I feel like this is going to be quite a series of us getting it together every now and then to talk about things because
Perfect.
co-parenting and navigating it's a big thing when it comes down to finance, when it comes down to new girlfriend. And the last one I want
Right.
to talk about is how can dads develop that secure bond with their kids with such limited time? Because I know a lot of the frustrations with dads is they don't, once they split up and they're not having their kids every weekend, or
Right.
they're not tucking their kids into bed, they're not seeing their kids every day, and the weekend dad, and they become babysitters, so to speak, and all that sort of thing.
Right.
How can they build a strong enough bond that they feel they're doing, getting, being enough for their kids?
I mean, first, show up. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Be present and show up.
yeah,
And so quality can trump quantity
yeah.
if you put the effort in, right? And
Mhm.
so when you have your kids, if it's a situation where you're limited to 6, 8 days a month plus X amount of time in the summer, or, however the schedule ends up being against you or for you, you can make that time count
Mhm.
by getting off your fucking phone,
Yeah,
not going and having other people around, not deciding that's when you need to fix the transmission of your pickup, or, you know what I mean, do activities that your kids enjoy as well as activities that maybe you enjoy. So say you're a big fisherman and your kids aren't super into fishing, but it's something that you like to do with them.
yeah,
Sure, still go fishing, but don't make them just sit in a boat
yeah, yeah.
every
Not
time that
not
you
for 10
have them if
hours.
that's
And
not their thing. You
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
And so
cool.
the quality of time is going to be that deal. But also, there's nothing that says that you're not allowed to be involved in your kids' lives. So if you have the time, energy, resources, and are able, there's nothing stopping you from being the coaches on their teams. There's nothing stopping you from doing, you know, drop off pickups
Yeah,
for these,
yeah.
those, and the others. You know what I mean? And
Parent
if
and
you can
kids
get,
classes and all that sort of thing.
yeah, and
Yeah,
and show up at the school functions,
yeah,
be at the dance recitals, be at all the sports, at all the games. Help
mm,
them, if they're doing cheerleading, help them with their cheers or dances or whatever.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like be involved and be a present parent. Don't just have them on the weekends and have the TV on and do whatever. You know what I mean? Like make
yeah.
quality time.
I think so many dads do that, don't they?
Right,
Yeah,
right. And if you can if you can if you can bring peace into the whole co-parenting relationship, right?
yeah,
Which is a little bit of empathy, a little bit of understanding, a little bit of grace. Sometimes you got to bite your tongue. Sometimes you got to stop reacting to situations and messages and stuff and start responding. And the more that you start responding, the more calm everything can be. And then you can start working out, the right to first refusal. That's what we had.
yeah.
So if I had, if my daughter's mother called me up when she was 3 and said, "Hey, there's a concert or something. A bunch of the girls are going out tonight, whatever, da 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 da. Are you busy? Do you want extra time?"
Hmm.
And then if I didn't have anything going, I'd be like, "Yeah, sure." We got called, the other parent got called before grandparents, babysitters,
Yeah, of
anything
course.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So we could just have
And did
extra
that,
time
did
with
that
our
come off
daughter.
the back? Sorry, did that come off the back
Yeah,
of good communication beforehand,
right,
building
right.
up the communication, building
You
up the
have to.
relationship? Yeah,
Because it works really well when it works really well, but if you don't have good communication and understanding,
yeah,
because it's really hard to not have it thrown back in your face or to throw it in their face the
yeah,
next time you get in an argument. Well, if
yes.
you don't want your kid when it's your time, then maybe they just shouldn't go to your house. And that kind of stuff
Yeah,
will,
yeah,
if you
yeah, of
if you're not
course.
able to communicate, that kind of stuff will come
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
And you have to be in a place where you just understand that they're allowed to have a life. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of times where I've had my daughter where something had came up or I needed to drive 100 miles away to go pick a truck up to bring it back so it could get serviced so it could get to the next job or whatever whatever the case may be.
yeah,
And having that understanding and freedom, and especially now that the last 3 months, like I've been hurt, and so I've
yeah,
been
yeah,
limited.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? And like being in a place where we can communicate and I
Mhm.
can be like, hey, I'm not mobile enough to be driving and this and that. Can you pick her up and drop her off at my house on my days and this and da, da, da.
Yeah, yeah,
Would
yeah.
you mind swinging by the grocery store on your way? Because I
Wow.
need
Yeah,
this, this, and this. And
yeah,
it's no big deal. You know what I mean?
cool.
Because we understand that everything's for our daughter and this and that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Oh,
so it's there's something to be said about being able to get to that sort of a place. And it takes a lot of healing and it's not fast. It's not easy.
mhm,
It's definitely worth it, but
mhm.
it's going to be all the guy.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? You cannot control how somebody else acts reacts and carries themselves.
Of course.
You can only control yourself, but the more peaceful you are
Yeah.
and the more work you do, the whole be the change idea of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the less I let her provoke me, or I was instantly defensive and provoking her, the
Mhm.
less it just was ever happening because we were able to just talk things out and communicate,
Yeah.
put our daughter first, da 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 da. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel there's a word that I feel like that umbrellas that, and that's being a leader. Do you know what I
Right,
mean? I feel like you had to be the leader. And I think most dads need to realize that even though you're not leader of your family anymore, you can still lead the situation,
right,
take control of the situation. You can still, even though you can't control her, you can control how you react. Do you know what I mean?
right,
And all these things that great leaders are good at, that's what you need to become. Because in the end, it's gonna, and you might have to bite your lip, you might have to
right,
play the game, you might have to offload and rant at someone else
right,
rather than her. But in the long run, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, somewhere down the
right.
line, it's going to pay off.
And you know, it's a habits and training, habits and training, habits and training, because everything's going to stack and compound on itself.
Yes.
So the less you react, the less they look for the reaction, and then it just keeps getting,
And then
less aggressive, less aggressive, less aggressive. But
yeah,
also, maybe this thing is an issue, and it's an issue right now, and you want to react to it, but it's not life or death. It doesn't need to be dealt with today
now.
while
Yeah.
emotions are high.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So then when you get to a better place, then you can openly discuss some of these things and be like, hey, can we talk about this kind of a situation? Last time I had this feelings about it. I wanted, I wanted to bring it up, but I didn't want to have a reaction and go overboard. And I don't, I'd rather us just be able to talk about these things.
Yeah.
And if you can get to where you can get yourself, especially as the guy, to come in cool headed, even tempered, and be able
Mhm.
to say, hey, this is, I had this kind of feeling. I'm not judging you. I'm not putting blame on you. I don't want you to feel like I'm attacking you.
Yep.
This is what happened. This was the situation. This is what feelings came up for me.
Yep.
But even, if you can get to the place where you can do that, if it's just something that, maybe it's something you need to work on and that has nothing to do with them because you got triggered because of something that happened to you when you were 15 with a girlfriend that cheated on you with the quarterback or whatever the case may be. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Of
And
course.
so,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you got to make sure you're coming at them correct if you want them to come at you correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally, man. Totally. I tell you what, JP, you're full of knowledge, aren't you? You're full of knowledge and bombs. So.
Try.
The good thing, like I said at the beginning, you've been through it. So
Right,
what better than to experience it, then you know how to move forward. There's a few
right,
things I want to recap quickly. Number one, dads, you got to get out of your own head. That's number one. Number two, you've got to go through the healing process. And how that looks for each dad is individual, isn't it? Whether you go through
right,
counseling, therapy, whether you can do it yourself, talk it with a friend, whatever it is, you've got to go through that healing process. The
right,
first protocol, the quickest thing you want to do is establish good communication. And how that looks, whether it's with a mediator in the middle or whether you can do it before yourselves. The key in all this, the umbrella of it all is become good at communicating with each other.
right,
And last but not least, be a leader. So take ownership, take responsibility. You can't control her, but you can control how you react. You can control the
right,
situation. If you want to see your kid more, be actionable, go to the school, be involved more. When it comes down to finances, have that discussion. If you can't, then sometimes you just got to bite your lip, grip it, and go through with it.
right, right. Because I
And
mean,
go
the
on.
things you can't change, you can't change.
Yeah,
So, I
totally.
mean, be the leader of the family. You're still the leader of the family
Yeah,
because how you interact, handle this situation, the scenario, and all these different things is teaching your kids that this is how adults communicate. This is how the
yep,
real world is. This is
yep,
how people act towards each other. And you're still the masculine energy 99.9% of the time, 95% of the time, whatever it is. You are
yep,
still the provider, protector, the masculine energy, and it is you set the tone,
yep, totally.
right? So
Totally.
if you want things to be peaceful and even killed and be able to communicate and stuff, you have to interject that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
bite your lip and bite your tongue and not have these big blowouts
Yeah.
because you need to get out of your and I hate to say, the feminine energy but you need to control your emotions and be able to keep your emotions in check and not let those run rampant and write checks your ass can't cash. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. I like that. That's a good one, that is. I like that. Totally, man. Totally. JP, mate, I must say, I appreciate your time, man, because I know we've been
Oh
chatting
yeah.
for nearly an hour, but I feel like we need to do another podcast a bit later on around the certain topics that come up because, as you know, when I speak to dads, they bring up topics. And I'm like, yeah, cool, okay. So, and you're trying to guide them stuff like that, but
Right.
good knowledge bombs that you've got, that you've been through, that you talk to others about, it's so important. But I appreciate your time, mate. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Um,
Off.
is there a place where people can get you? Is it at Instagram? What's it on Instagram?
JPMRSH.
And anything else? Any emails?
No, just Instagram. Instagram's usually the best place because
Okay,
then
of course.
all my messages and everything are kind of grouped in one spot. So
Okay, wicked. So if you want to hit JP up, hit him up on Instagram. Otherwise, we'll do another podcast in a few weeks' time. Otherwise, JP, thank you so much for your time.
thanks,
And
man. Appreciate it.
cheers, man. Speak to you soon.